Nucleus LINK is the most commonly used roasting machine in coffee competitions, and while the system is super simple to use, there are some things you want to know in order to get the last little bit out of your roasts. Therefore, we made a more than an hour long webinar together with Jerome Rosler and Corra from Nucleus Coffee Tools, so those legends that are working every day with coffee competitors on regional, national, but also world's level. They have supported people like Martin or Matt to win the World's Brewers Cup, so they really know what it's about when it comes to going to competitions, what it's about when it comes to get the best out of the coffees. And therefore also in this webinar, in the first part, they will be talking about score sheets, what's important in coffee competitions, but then also how to use the link system to again, in those aspects on the score sheet where it really matters, get the best out of a coffee. And after that, they will share a lot of examples of people they have worked with, of their profiles, how the profiles are comparing to each other. And then we had also a Q&A session where they answered then specific questions of people. So if you want to go to competitions with the link, make sure you watch this video, take a paper, take pen, take notes, so that you then really get the best out of your system and get those little details then at the end that will make the difference in your competition. In addition to that, there are also some basic settings that you need to do on the system. This is then relevant for everybody using the machine to really get then good results. Therefore, I'm also going to link you down there 3 videos that I made. In one, I'm going to show you how to do a setup, how to prepare the machine, how to do fan calibration, so that you really then have the best experience with it. I also made a second video where I shared then some news or some knowledge from experience that I had with people where I saw that they sometimes struggled. So it's a 2-minute video where I'm telling you some things to consider to get the best out of it. And then there are also another video, also a short video where I explain you then the new preferences settings. This is also something you might want to watch, because here you have the possibility then also still tweak your profiles and get a bit better results out of it. So if you haven't yet, then look at the 3 videos below. Make sure you are then really comfortable with your machine, and then watch the webinar in order to get then the last little bits out of it. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you're interested in the Link roaster, if you haven't got one yet, if you're in Europe, then make sure to come to our website roastables.com. We have them in stock. We have free and fast shipping all over Europe, and we have the most experienced service team over here. But now I would say, let's go with the video.
Thank you everyone for joining. It's always lovely to be able to share a little bit more behind the competitions, what we actually are doing, and actually correlating a lot to the score sheet and honestly what inspires us. I think a lot of us for our why within Nucleus actually stems from competitions within coffee, because it always gets us to dig deeper and understand coffee at a deeper level and challenge us to think really outside of the box. So for the next 15-20 minutes, I'll just be talking a little bit more specifically of the score sheet breakdown and some recent examples from the competitions. Basically, my objective over the next little bit is to try and enhance some strategies in which you can look to utilize the link, but as well hopefully start to understand the score sheets better and possibly make yourself a better brewer or a better understanding of how roasts and brew kind of can work together. Awesome. So I'll break down the score sheet. For those who haven't competed, brewers, there's competitions of brewers, barista, there's cup tasters, there's latte art, and there's quite a lot of throwdowns that happen internationally. This one that I'm going to really focus on today, which is going to be actually coming up for a lot of you in Germany and a few other places in Europe as well, is Brewers Cup. This is what the score sheet looks like. So you have coffee evaluation, which is going to be all across here, which I'll go through each category and what it actually correlates to. Then you get scored on your accuracy, and then finally a little bit of your attention to details, a little bit about your coffee knowledge, and a little bit about presentation. But let me start here at the top box. So coffee evaluation, the first thing they're going to look at is assessing your aroma. Your aroma is referring to the smell of the brew. It's basically, they always judge it on intensity, the complexity, and clarity. So you always will get really good notes if you're getting something super floral, super intense with the fruit, something sweet, something very ripe. They always like to give high quality, low quality scores. So say, for example, like you get a judge and they're like, oh, there's a hint of raspberry, or another one might be saying it smells exactly like raspberry jam. Of course, something that's with a raspberry jam that's a little bit more descriptive is going to score high. You get scored basically anywhere from 0 to 9. Majority of judges, they'll start at a 4 and a 5 and kind of work their way up based on what their uh, how they feel that it is. Next one is flavor. This is basically the correlation of those aromatic qualities to how it actually tastes. And these are all retronasal. So you're going to be talking about your whatever type of flavor it is, like your classic Waschgescher, for example, will be like bergamot, honeysuckle, jasmine. As soon as you start to get more like a fermenty kind of side, you'll start to get notes like strawberry, raspberry, winey, cherry, and stuff. Well, the cool thing about this is when it comes to flavor and all throughout the rest of these boxes is that they always like to see a transition. So how does the coffee behave when it's hot and is it cooled? A coffee that's really complete probably will be well structured, have the same notes as hot and cold, but there might be a few additional as it cools. So the last sip that they actually take is the last one that they're judging. So sometimes you can actually score lower initially, like score a 6, but actually start to score a 7 and 8 as it's cooling. And for me, a coffee that cools the best is the one that you've roasted and brewed the best, because the coffee, when it cools, is when it actually is completely being exposed. The next one is the aftertaste. So that's the feeling after the coffee, after you swallow the coffee. They'll always judge it on length first, whether it's a short aftertaste, long aftertaste, or sorry, medium aftertaste or long aftertaste. You always want something that is like medium to long in length, because it's always typically of a good quality. You want something to be positive, so you want there to be some sort of lingering aspect, not so much on the astringency or bitterness. As soon as you start to get astringency and bitterness, those are more negatives that get added into the cup, which you actually get scored down upon. Always like something that is always like mouth watering, mouth coating, very candied, or very insanely floral. Those are the types that really score quite well within this aftertaste box. Kind of want that to hold itself, as I was saying, as it's from hot to cool. Next one is acidity. So this is more your brightness, how it's actually so lively and how it actually integrates within the cup. So you will talk about your main acidity levels being citric, malic, tartaric. There's a few others that I'm forgetting at the top of my head. Forgive me. But basically you want to be describing the intensity and the quality. Some people like to integrate like the quality, it's citric like grapefruit, and then it's tartaric like red grape as an example. But most judges internationally, they just want to understand what the quality of the acid is and how it's transitioning from hot to cold. There's no like low quality acids or high quality acids when it comes to a lot of it. They will only be judging like the actual intensity and the clarity of it. So you can have like a low intensity acid, but if it's well integrated into the cup, you can still score incredibly high. Next one is the sweetness. This is typically everyone's like favorite box. Everybody likes like a sweeter style of coffee. So you're talking about something that is like fruity sweet, whether it's starchy sweet, whether it's like caramelized kind of style of sweetness. All of these are quite similar. What's really interesting is that in roasting, you always will have some sort of caramelization. So for me, when it comes to if you're playing the score sheet right, you always want to say some brown sugar or some caramel aspect, because no matter what, that is an automatic tick that you'll always will get in the box. So you just want to describe the intensity again, and then work your way in terms of the style / expression of the sweetness. And then the last one here being mouthfeel. Mouthfeel is broken down into two, meaning the coffee's thickness or like the weight, and then tactile or texture basically. So think of the weight as your low, medium, and high, like how heavy that it sits. If it's heavy, it's more probably syrupy, heavy in coating. If it's more medium, it's probably creamy, it can be juicy, it can be round, smooth, and then light, meaning like something that's more tea-like, more silky, more delicate as well. All of them can be all good mouthfeels. For me, it's always good to be anywhere from that low plus to like medium plus. When you start to get into the heavy and very low styles, you start to get a little bit more into the negativity. And then overall being an incorporation of all of these scores across the board. And then finally, they're going to judge you based off the accuracy that you actually said to what they actually tasted in the cup. Cool. So now that we went through a little bit of that, we're going to go and start talking about a few representations that we've actually worked with for the last little bit. The first one I'll be starting with is Eileen. Eileen, we worked with over at the World Brewers Cup Championship over in Jakarta. Super lovely person, amazing. It's very inspirational to a lot of people that competed around her. Always is known for her nice, warm, and bubbly personality. So when she competed just recently in Jakarta, she used a Lost Origin coffee that was collaboration with Las Margaritas over in Panama. Her decision was to use the Hario switch. Hario switch, for those who aren't familiar with it, is an immersion and percolation dripper that just allows you the flexibility in terms of brewing to make things quite simple. For her, she used that hybrid capability, but extended the steeping time, allow her to have be able to replicate it from brew to brew. And by utilizing that brew technique, she really wanted to enhance the flavor clarity and really get that structured weight slash mouthfeel slash tactile that we were just talking about. So if we're breaking down her roast, when we're looking at it for the link, what I utilized was a filter B base. For those who aren't aware, Sam will be going through it a little bit later, but we have different bases when it comes to all of our filter packs. We have anything from A to E, including the WBRC one that I created for Martin last year. So with Eileen, to get the most out of her coffee, we utilized a profile from filter B, but we wanted to speed up the Maillard. The reason why we wanted to speed up the Maillard is because that she was using the switch brewer, and she was actually able to get a lot of the sweetness and weight that you typically get out of Maillard, but she wanted to strip that back a little bit and do a little bit of a shorter development and let her brewing technique like really take over. Now, the benefit on this was that she was able to really intensify her flavor clarity, but as well get that acid that she really needed out of the coffee, because alone with her brewing technique, she struggled to get like really high quality acidity. So as we see when we're looking at this roast curve right here, what you can see is that the filter B actually typically starts to crack when it's around 7 minutes. So what we did was we increased these temperature points so that the first crack was happening here at 7:15. Sorry, not 7:15, at 6:30 instead of at 7. And we did a development that was much shorter of typically what you would do, which is 45 seconds. And you can see the temperature increase of 3.7. So this coffee was cracking at 210.5, and it actually finished at 214.2. She found this to be super successful. Her coffee was absolutely amazing. It's one of the more kind of floral slash fruit mixes. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make finals, but honestly, she's probably going to be up there again next year. She's an absolute weapon, and the coffee is so good. And she was actually able to really work with her coach and work alongside me and be able to really get the most out of this coffee. And for me, it was definitely one of the highlights of the entire competition. The next one is June. June, we've had actually on this seminar before, and we were actually talking about how she utilized it last year for Germany when she won Brewers Cup. She was in Jakarta as well, and it was amazing to be able to work with her actually in person this time. Over the last 2 years, we've been working online back and forth with each other, helping tailor roasts and understand different coffees. For me, it was so unique for her when she won Germany, because she used a Nicaraguan CM Natural Gesha. Now, this coffee is typically something that you wouldn't use on the competition stage. In comps, you always see Colombia, Panama, and possibly Ethiopia. So taking a different coffee outside of that was like really, really cool to see. This year when she was competing at Worlds, which was just a couple months ago, she actually used Mikaba, which is a Colombian producer, and she used a CM Natural. Sam will remember this coffee as well. It's very like high candied sweetness, very high acid, very high expression. And she decided to use the Grecano dripper, which you can see in this picture here, as well as using a booster. The booster was at the very bottom of the dripper. It just allowed her to hit all of these contact points and be able to get an even drawdown, but as well as this mellow dripper. Mellow drip has become quite popular within the competition scene. You'll probably see at Worlds, there was close to like 40% of competitors using some sort of drip assist mechanism. This allowed them just to have an even drawdown whenever they're pouring, to allow them to have a consistency, or what I like to say is like this robotic motion, allowing you to get like further consistency between all three cups, allowing you to recreate everything quite easily. So for her roast, what we wanted to really achieve was a high solubility. It really elevate this candied sweetness and kind of round out the acidity, because this coffee was quite peaky. When I say peaky in acidity, it was quite high in intensity, but we just wanted to round it out and make it like super special so that it was quite integrated. So what the cool thing with June is, we didn't actually need to tailor too much. We actually just used the classic filter B, and when we actually used 208 exactly, the only thing that we really changed is we went down in development. We were using 48 seconds, and then we used a higher fan increase. The reason why we used the higher fan increase is because the size of the gesha. The size of the gesha, I wanted to get a little bit more oscillation or fan moving to allow me to get a little bit more evenness. And for us, the result was pretty amazing. She had this champagne, sparkly like mouthfeel. It had this tropical pineapple papaya like acidity, and it maintained this raspberry candy style sweetness kind of throughout. It was really cool because she spent a lot of time in getting to Jakarta earlier, and she got really close with the team over in Indonesia. So it was cool to see her transformation at her first time at Worlds and really evolve. And I believe a lot of you will be seeing her again in Germany in, I believe it's September or October, where she'll be competing again. She's an absolute legend. So many people absolutely love her, including me. She's done incredibly well. The next one is Justin. Justin is from the US. He's very new to the industry, which was very cool to see. He actually used a coffee that was quite close to Sam and myself, which is called Vivid. This is a coffee from Jameson Savage over in Panama from Finca Debra. It's really cool because it's a CM wash, meaning the whole coffee was carbonic macerated, fermented for like quite a short period. This allowed that wash coffee to have a little bit more intensity to it with Jameson's classic wash style. And then he used like really cool drying techniques where he has 3 different drying beds to get 3 different humidities. And basically we're able to really get the tactile element of it really unique. Brewer that he used, this is an April switch. You can see a picture of it here. Think of it as the same thing that I was talking about before, which is the Hario switch. But this one is flatbed, and you can see he's using wave filter paper. It just allows you to do percolation and immersion. What's really unique is that he had his whole topic on hybrid, so hybrid processing and hybrid brewing, and it really correlated well to his entire theme. And for us, we really wanted to get a longer Maillard with this shorter first crack, because we really just wanted to basically put this wash coffee on steroids and really give it all that it's capable of, meaning we wanted to see all the florals and all the fruit possibilities. So what we did was a more of a unique approach, I would say, a space that doesn't get utilized much in comps, which is the Omni D303. So what we did was we wanted to have a super long approach in comparison. The ones that you saw before, a lot of them were cracking at like 7 or 7.5 minutes. By extending the Maillard here, we're actually able to develop even more sweetness and more mouthfeel and really open up this coffee. I really highly suggest this with wash style coffees because it can just make them truly pop. We're actually going to be teasing some things that we're going to be looking at a little bit later. But for this coffee, it worked incredibly well. You can see the development was quite low, was only doing 7.7%, but actually correlated over to 48 seconds. Over the roast, you can see the cracking point was at a much lower point, being at 202, and the temperature increase was only 2.9. For me, this was probably one of my top 3 coffees I've had this year. It was absolutely crazy. Like the orange and yellow floral combination was so intense and so distinct. He had this really round, syrupy mouthfeel, which is really hard to get out of wash coffees. Typically, wash coffees are quite thin, silky, and etc. And he was really able to make this complex while being super clear, and utilizing this hybrid of immersion and percolation. He was really able to push this roast. He actually ended up using something that was quite fresh off roast, which I found to be quite unique. His routine, I highly always suggest watching. It's a very, very good energy, personality, and figure, but as well as just well executed and really thinking more about how roast will correlate over to brew. And he really nailed it. And he ended up being a finalist as well. So he has 2 routines that are available on YouTube as well that you can watch. Next one that I kind of wanted to show is someone I just recently worked with in the Singapore National Brewers Cup, which is Eason. He's from Glyph over in Singapore. He just placed second. Reason why I want to highlight is because he utilized something that's a little bit more unique and rare, especially within the competition scene. It was made quite famous by Matt Winton quite a few years ago, which is Eugenioides. Eugenioides, for you guys don't know, is like the mother of Arabica, and it's very, very small in screen size. It's like a pain in the ass to actually roast if you're getting to know it. But basically what he utilized, where you can see here, is the Hario Alpha, which is a ceramic-based, think V60. And he utilized the Lily Drip, which is, some of you might not know, it's basically like a booster that you put at the top, allowing your cone base to become more like a flatbed. And then finally you used a booster. Now, I'm just going to focus on the roast approach with Uji here because it's very unique. We basically just wanted to create something that was quite high in solubility. And the best approach that I was able to find with it, and Sam can talk more even about Uji a little bit later, is we utilized a cupping approach to really elevate its candied sweetness. We wanted to bind so much to the Neguo to allow it to almost give it a little bit of pixie dust or sparkle to it. So how we approach this is I actually use that cupping base, which is the classic one that a lot of us will actually use whenever we're doing cupping, which is cupping D and 208. The biggest difference is what we did was a significant decrease with the fan adjustment. This allowed us to get the right oscillation that we actually wanted to be happening within the Uji, because if we did at a normal 0-0 flat, we would have had the beans like spinning way too fast and probably wouldn't get a lot of the characteristics that we didn't want to have. So what we did is we did minus 0.07. This allowed us to get the right oscillation that we were after the 80-gram batch size. What you can see is that we actually did like a longer style development. This longer style really gave us that big fruit intensity and still having that crazy confectionery with the high aromatics and high sweetness. He actually ended up scoring the highest in sensory, and a lot of this was to do with the Uji. It just really made this coffee like truly pop. I hope those like 4 examples kind of really helped you guys. They kind of give like different perspectives of what other people can possibly do by utilizing the system, whether it's using the base profiles or making some of these slight adjustments. But one thing I kind of wanted to pinpoint is like how each of some profiles that I would use as like starting points if I'm wanting to achieve like certain things within the roast. So for aroma, if I'm wanting to get one of the best aromatic expressions that's quite round and still crazy lively, is filter E. This is because it's of its fast drying approach. If you ever are cupping or brewing a coffee side by side and you just want this crazy intense aromatic expression, I would always suggest starting off with filter E. The next one, if you're really wanting to have that flavor, Justin was that premium kind of style for flavor with this longer Maillard. I would always suggest trying to do like Omni D, anything that's like 42 seconds all the way to like 47, 48 seconds really opens up that flavor clarity and it becomes quite linear. The only thing you need to be worried about is how the mouthfeel, acid, and sweetness all integrates, and that you can always adjust through your brewing, through your water as well. Next one would be for the aftertaste. You really want something that's like quite a gentle style development and quite stable ROR with a finish. There's actually some profiles that we're working on behind the scenes at the moment. So if you are interested in competing and stuff, I would love to get more in touch as well. But one I would be definitely recommending as a starting point is Filter B. The next one would be sweetness. This is by stretching the Maillard. Omni D is a very good one, but a classic one for me would be Filter C. This was actually the base on which I was using for Martin when he won Worlds a couple years ago in Chicago. I utilized Filter C and made some adjustments to it because I really wanted to make the acidity pop, not just the sweetness. So acidity, like just how I was saying, I like it with shorter style roast or shorter style development as well. The Martin WBRC pack that we have within here is amazing if you want to do any kind of like Panama, Guatemala, Honduras, Central American geisha. This is such a good starting point. Raul Rodas, who made finals and worlds, he actually just used exactly the same. He just did 207 WBRC, and he was the only one using like a non-Colombian, Panama geisha that actually made it into the finals, which was really cool to see. And he was just using the basic template of that and just developing it for 12.5%. Next one for mouthfeel, you just want that even rate of rise, decrease. And for me, it's like Filter B. As I was saying, please reach out to us if you are competing. We'd love to help, love to support you guys. So if you don't have our contact already, you can reach out to Ingo and he can point you in kind of the right direction. We always love creating new profiles. As I was saying, like the way that we kind of really inspire ourselves through coffee is through competitions and through different brewing methods. And these are through the people and the deeper community. So please get in touch with us if you are competing. So a couple of things that I want to touch on is just common themes as well. As you kind of like saw throughout, there was like this common theme with all the competitors that they were roasting and then trying to brew that integration. This is very, very important to have like this whole kind of loop, understanding where your coffee comes from, understanding the density and the moisture, which Sam will go through a little bit in a bit, but understanding your coffee a whole lot more before you're starting to roast it and getting to know your producer and having like this deeper connection will really, really help you because then you actually will be able to make smarter decisions about how you're brewing your coffee. But before you even start to brew your coffee, how you can set yourself up for success is tailoring your roast to suit your actual brew technique, whether it's the hybrid style brewing like Justin and Eileen, or if you're doing something like pulse pouring, which is over 3, 4, or 5 pours, something like that. You can use specific packs within the system to be able to set you up for success. So the little takeaways that I would say for this last like 15 minutes that I was talking about, really consider a score sheet before you start roasting. What are you actually wanting to achieve? What do you want to maximize out of this coffee? And really tailor your brew method and process to that specific process and align this roast and brew to amplify these certain attributes that you truly want to shine. Uh, that's going to be it for me for now. I think I went a little bit over what I said I was going to be able to do, but I'm going to pass it on to Sam. As always, we'll have questions at the very end. So if you guys have any further questions about how someone utilized something or what I would do with another brew technique or styles of coffee, please feel free to raise your hand and ask at the very end. Thank you.
Just have a very super quick question before we head over to Sam, because you brought these examples on how you work together with competitors. Can you maybe just tell people how such a cooperation or like a partnership with a brewer is going to happen, how it's going to start, and for who can actually then who can have access to this support from your side?
Yeah, I would say everybody and anybody, to be honest. So even if you're a home brewer, like honestly, reach out to us. And if you're like really inspired about trying to change your brew technique or understanding a little bit more how roast actually gets correlated into the final cup, please reach out. Like Inga, please send them over to us. We're always happy to understand and take on feedback of how we can make our profiles even better or ways in which they can utilize the system to even gain a further value. Because for me, at the end of the day, the link is not just a roaster, it's an education resource to kind of set you up for success, whether that's with competitions or if that's brewing your coffee in your daily morning to get you going with work, but having that coffee be the best representation of what it could possibly be.
Yeah, I
Nice.
would say, just to fix up on extend from there, is reach out to your local distributor. Ask them for support if you're looking for a particular taste or quality, and those who are looking for something specific or that they just can't quite find what they're looking for with the existing options. Like, reach out, give us the density, the process, the variety, any information you can about the coffee, and it'll allow us to then give you the best roast approach for whatever brewing method that you're looking to tailor for your competition, or just to brew at home, as Jerome said.
Right. Hey, that's so nice from you. That's such a great and valuable support. But yeah, now let's head over to you, Sam.
Yeah, perfect. So just trailing on for Jerome, like, fantastic way to explain how recently, some of the approaches we've worked on have been adapted to competition. My segment's more just, I guess, breaking down how easy it will be for competitors to use Link, or even home brewers to use Link, and also be able to see benefits from approaching copies in different ways. This segment's about breaking down the current profile packs that we have and giving you a little bit of backstory and history behind them. So Ingo did a great representation, but Jerome and myself are both competitors. We've come from companies who are strongly invested in competing, and the Link, essentially the backbone of the Link, is really refined from competition. Obviously, the product was originally designed for origin, with the features and functions and capabilities. But when it comes to the profile packs, this is all inspired by the people that we've worked with over the last 5, 6, 10 years, even when we weren't working on Link specific roast profiles, and taking that knowledge that we've learned and adapting it to approaches that make anyone who wants to roast coffee to their best and has a particular outcome be able to achieve that outcome through this system. The idea that we built the Link on is they're on this idea of perpetual progress. So as you know, competitions come around every year. There's comp season finishes, and then by the time we think it's all done, it's all starting again. And for us, that's really, really exciting. You've seen already in 2025 just how much work Jerome has done with various people globally that will take that feedback, information, approaches, understandings, and develop some new approaches, which is really cool. And I'll show you some stuff at the end, which no one's really seen, but just giving you the idea of where we're heading just from what we're learning from competitions. But what I want to start on is, just as we make these discoveries each year, we kind of try to implement the approaches and the improvements so that not just the competitor on the stage or a set of judges get the benefits from the approaches that we had, but actually putting it out to the Link community. That if we've developed something specific, you yourself can see if that specific approach works for your particular coffee or however you want to approach it. I'm going to start by going through a few things in history. So I like to go back to the beginning. The really foundation point of Link and profiling system is around 2021 competitions. This gentleman became quite well known by winning the World Championship that year over in Milan. Now, a little thing that people don't know about Link is when you open up the system, there's a Nucleus default profile. This is the default profile. You open it. Little Easter egg that I've decided to share is this is actually the exact profile we used for the 2021 World Championship to roast pretty much all of these coffees. It's 208 NCD, and it's an approach that everyone bases on. And this is the foundation that built the initial idea of a profile pack. We took that one profile after that success, we duplicated it 41 times, and that became the alpha set that we built the profiling system around. That was what we started with. Also in that year, we had the first ever, and we're moving outside of brewing and into barista world, but we also like to support that as well. And we had the first ever African nation competitor to make a World Barista Championship final in Martin Shibaya. Now, the challenge we had here is we had a coffee that was not suited for milk base. It was a beautiful washed Kenyan, amazing filter coffee, fantastic espresso. But as we know, the foundation of milk base is generally around body, sweetness, structure, heaviness to cut through the fats, the sugars of the proteins of the milk. This approach is quite unique, and it allowed us to develop what then became the B15 and the D12 cupping profiles. And this is thinking outside of the box. You think about milk-based coffee as a ability that you want the cut of the strength of the espresso to make the impact of the flavor, but this is just using on a different catalyst. What we decided to do was make a coffee that was really intense, but intense in characteristics of acidity, intensive characteristics of aromas, and especially florality. Now, we use the catalyst of the fats and the sugars in the milk to actually create a softer, creamy body, and that acidity to really create the distinct, unique flavors of the coffee. These approaches were fantastic for unique short beverage milk-based profiles. So anything that was around, let's say, between 70 to 90 grams of milk, doing these faster style roasts is a really nice way to express milk-based coffee in a different way. So if anyone's in the barista world, you've got a very expensive coffee, or you're just at home and you're wanting to try a unique and different approach to making a fantastic milk-based coffee, don't be scared that it's a cupping profile. I know by theory and by you taught that espresso needs to be longer, more Maillard, more development, but the idea behind this was thinking out of the box to create a scenario that was different. This allowed us to create a very unique approach that works amazing for cupping coffees and became a default profile because it just really works so well, both of these two coffees as our base range, but it's also a little one there for you guys to note that please try them if you're looking for a unique milk-based experience. You will need a slightly longer extraction, around 1 to 2.5, or even a little bit longer getting into the 3s. And again, as I said, anywhere from 70 to 100 grams of milk in order to utilize those profiles. This became the first ever version 1 profile pack that we released, which had the 5 different cupping specific profiles. And as you know, the default base, which is really also kind of very similar to the A10, and then as well the B and the D, which were developed by Martin, as well as some profiles, the C and the E, which were specific for countries who wanted a more full-bodied cupping experience, particularly in the Americas. Moving on to the 2022 World Championship, and this was in Melbourne. And as I said, Link originally around that time was designed to bring technology to origin, focus on how can we make cupping specific profiles. But we didn't really have any filter specific profiles. We worked with a number of competitors, one of them being Nicole Battlefield Montgomery, obviously Nicole Battlefield back then. But the idea was we're working with these people globally, not just people that we're in the same room developing profiles, but actually creating stuff in our own rooms and environments for them and sending them across the world in order to get an understanding. More people are wanting to use the link for filter development. So we need to start to look at ways in which we can create filter specific profiles. We also helped some other competitors, Wölfley Jr., Les Masters, and a few others that year. And it made us realize we really need to start making direct filter applied profiles. And the Grey Carno is a very interesting dripper where it has fantastic clarity, but we need quite a soluble coffee in order to get the most out of it. And we found that the filter B, in developing that particularly for Nicole's approach, was something that just worked so well that it became a staple. As you see, Jerome still using it in 2025 for different competitors and it's still achieving really fantastic results. So know when you're approaching these profiles and looking to use those different styles, they're actually coming from a place of merit, experience, and feedback from the competitions in order to direct, correct, and create that particular profile that we're looking for. This was then introduced that in version 2. This is why we have now some filter spaces, as well as starting to develop out where the espresso and omni spaces go. But as you can see, it's really cupping heavy in our development of what we had for the original packs that we had in this version. This man is also quite famous. We know Martin Wölfle as the 2024 world champion. A lot of people don't realize that in 2023, he also competed, and that's a coffee I also roasted. And I think that the most interesting thing about competitions and coffee and in, you know, our development chain is we will not always succeed. Sometimes we will fail. And I like to say this to a lot of people, even though I've had the privilege of working with many world champions and roasting coffee for myself with success. I roasted more bad coffee than I have in my lifetime good coffee. And it's only been through the bad coffee experiences that I'd actually managed to find a way forward to make the weaknesses I once had in the outcome strengths in how I can improve my theory and understanding, and also make the roast profiles better. Now, there were some few fundamental issues with just how we managed that routine that year in 2023. But the big thing that I realized is we were working with people and developing filter profiles that were specific for cone-shaped drippers. We weren't working with Aureas, flatbed, Kalitas, that style of brewer. And we know that Martin brews a very amazing Kalita flatbed style of approach. So we wanted to make roast profiles that would suit all kinds of brewing devices, which is why we started to expand the filter system. From the feedback that we got in Greece 2023 is that the development of Filter C. It was a profile that we shared, approached, tested around the way in which Martin was brewing, and realized that it's actually a fantastic result, especially for those flatbed drippers, which have amazing clarity, but we know that we need a little bit more solubility in the approach by extending either the development percentage or the increase after crack. As you can see, Filter C is an interesting approach. So it's the basis or taking approaches from two particular roast profiles that were existing in the system. The first green line is the Filter B. So we have that higher heat increase at the start of the roast, meaning that we're getting through the dry phase quite quickly. Then what we see with the Filter B is we're generally stretching it out and having a longer, lower heat increase roast. What we found worked best for a flatbed dripper was actually having a roast profile that mimicked more of that Nucleus default profile, or what we use for Matt Winton, where the time frame has that high movement that we have a stretched out Maillard phase, but a shorter, higher increase after the point of first crack in order to maximize the solubility needed, but also the intensity of flavors and structured in a much lower development phase. This ended up going in and becoming the only change that we made in the version 3 that we released when it comes to the profiling system. Jerome touched on this, but as we can say, fine details make a champion. And he did mention that he took that Filter C approach and customized it slightly. As you can see, this is the WBRC 2024 profile, the same profile Martin used in Chicago. And we took that and made that into a profile pack that everyone who wants to use that profile can take any coffee they have and approach it. But you can see the changes that Jerome made when he used this base profile are rather minimal. Main one is a little bit adjustment at the start of the roast with the heat. The main focus was shifting this earlier, higher, more aggressive cracking point, as well as a higher, sharper increase in order just to get the most out of that beautiful Lost Origin Finca Maya coffee that Martin used for that particular year. We have also that higher increase, as I mentioned at the end, because we wanted that solubility. And I think this is really important when selecting the roast plan overview, which you can do in the Link system, or go online and have a look at the different roast profiles, is think about your outcome first. What is the brewer? How am I going to prepare this coffee? And then roast the coffee that will best suit that particular coffee and brewing device that you're going to brew with. Maybe not the best approach to roast a coffee and then decide how to then brew it. I think starting with the outcome first is generally the best way for us to at least find the way in which you want to prepare the coffee and the solution in terms of roast approach, which is going to give us the best outcome for that qualities or attributes that you might want to achieve. That went into creating the version 4 profile. Now, I know we have a lot of brewers in this chat, but I want to just mention that Link is now not just about cupping or brewing coffee. We have Angus Mackey. He's the only one of us who is still in the barista comps, heavily involved and absolutely loves espresso. We're actively developing not only just the espresso space that we have, but working on new stuff, introducing elements into the Omni profile space that allows us to extend and change. But it's definitely an active thought process that if someone has a lower dispensable income or, less support, maybe they're not from a bigger roastery, but still wants to be actively involved in these competitions. Right now, I'm working with a few people over for the Sweden competition who are never roasted their own coffee, don't have access to maybe the roast they're looking for, but working on approaches for them in order to still allow them the resources to be competitive and successful from the experience we have from working with champions like Sasha Sestic, that was coffees we roasted, Agnieszka Rowinska, the Polish barista champion who then became the world champion. These are approaches and understandings. We have even Hugh Kelly, who's a multi-time finalist that we've worked with over many years, and putting them into the way in which we design profiles to be accessible to anyone wanting espresso. That became the Addis version 4.1. Last thing is what Jerome also touched on, which is that Omni space. And this is an idea that even if you're a barista or a brewer, it's a space for you and a space that you should explore and enjoy. The space was built around being able to amend one variable to how you want to utilize the coffee. That variable is DTR, or the development time ratio, extending it longer if you're doing a more soluble style, higher concentrate extraction, what you have in espresso, or lower if you're doing your cupping or filter. These approaches were designed to break down stereotypes that time is a limitation of how a coffee must be used. And by doing this, Jerome mentioned that why he loved Justin's coffee so much was it was atypical. I also competed in 2017 with a wash coffee, and the biggest problem with that is the competitions are designed to celebrate all kinds of coffee, but we know that there's a strategic play that certain styles, varieties, countries of coffees typically score higher and better, and even processes. So I wanted to design a space that would allow whatever coffee to still suit characteristics, intensities, weights, and structures that they're able to be used in competition. Now if you want to compete with a wash coffee, I know when I competed it was a big risk, but I wanted to serve a coffee I loved with. Justin essentially served the same style of coffee, same process that I created in 2017, but many years later in a more refined version from the same producer. And we were able to find a more competitive and structured way for him to approach that in the sea of the very noisy, loud, intense coffees through the Omni space, and utilizing time as a catalyst to develop perception of weight, intensity, richness, depth that maybe a wash coffee might not have organically, but still celebrate the terroir, the origin, the variety, without losing that core identity of who and what it was and why it's so beautiful being a wash coffee. That was the last update we currently have available to you guys, which is the Addis 4.1.2. Now, competitions is always a magic for refinements, and this is a little exciting space and something that why Jerome and myself says that if you're competing, if you're having struggles, reach out to your distributor, get a contact, get them to put in, us a message across, and we're happy to understand your needs and look to customize and adapt different approaches. This space is a lot of excitement. Now, it doesn't look like much but lines and curves right now, but we're testing over 40 unique and individual approaches across all roast styles, cupping, brewing, espresso, Omni, to bring the new and exciting developments that whatever we've learned from this comp season, whatever feedback that we've got from competitors or brewers or that, how do we address their needs? If someone has a particular new style of dripper that we've never seen, making sure that there's a roast profile we can recommend as a go-to. We're always developing, tinkering, tasting, and playing. So even though these approaches are not commercially available just yet, not all of them may become commercially available, but there's always something in the pipeline that we always have something we are developing, working on, or understanding in order to make roasting and getting the outcome that you're looking for much easier. So if it's not commercially available or you're just looking for that feedback and the information, the greatest thing about the Link community and Nucleus as a whole is it's not just about the products, it's also about the community. We have got where we have in our competitive and career worlds through support and knowledge of others, and it's at a time that we want to do things to allow those who have the desire to be able to reach their, I guess, best outcome of what they want to express through how we can help. So please reach out. We're always happy to have a look at a way in which we can suggest some different approaches and hopefully get you to a better starting point. So on that one, I'll pass it over to Inga and we can cover some of your questions.
Hey, thanks a lot, Sam. And of course, also Jerome, that's super interesting. And so where should people actually then be starting? Because I don't know if people really know it. Would you then recommend to go into this manual profile selection possibilities in the app, and then recommend people to try just different roast blends in order to maybe find the one that suits their coffee and their brewing style best? Or how would you recommend people to start?
Yeah, I'll give my opinion and I'd love to hear Jerome's as well. But I think that the manual profile space is great because not only do you see the curves, but you can click on the info tab and maybe get a little bit of understanding on what that profile is designed for. What style of drippers or what style of approach, and get the right outcome. I think that also using some of the available resources and writings that Jordan puts online as well when it comes to brewing selection and approaches to be able to understand which one will better suit. As you said, an easy way to do this would be to go through the manual profile, take 50 grams of your coffee once you've got your densities, and roast it across the different spaces and see which fits your style of brewing. Or, as I said, reach out to your distributor. I've got this coffee, I'm brewing it this way, this grinder, this micron, this pairing, this is my idea. What are some approaches to get me closer to the right taste expression when it comes to maybe not so much just the roast profile selection, but the small tweaks of DTR and things like that that can make the big difference. And again, we will always find someone to answer back with whether it's Jerome, myself, or Jordan to get you in the best box. Jerome, anything else you would like to cover?
No, I think you pretty much covered it quite a lot there. I would be looking to use a lot of the resources that we have within the app as well, because if you go and you click into a lot of the information tabs, it kind of breaks down the usages of why we would use each of these profiles once you actually get the solutions. And a big utilization thing, I would say, especially for internationally, and if you don't speak English that well, is utilizing our virtual assistant, which is called Marv. And there you can enter and be like, cool, I'm using a Gesha from Panama and I'm brewing using the Hario switch as an example. It'll give you some really good solutions in which you can actually start developing it that way, that you can be like, oh, cool, it takes a lot of that data. Cool, I'm going to do a manual profile selection, and it suggested me using filter E or filter B as like a starting point. And it gets you there like a whole lot faster instead of going through all of the profiles yourself. I still suggest, if you have the time, try and go through all of the profiles yourself and start to realize like how your brewing actually correlates a lot with the roast. I find that to be so educational. I love doing like seminars when you're actually able to cup and see all of these coffees roasted completely different, because sometimes the expressions that you see come from the roast that you didn't imagine. So those would be like my tips for sure.
Sure, thanks a lot. So also to the other participants in the call, just press the little button to hold your hand if you have a question that you want to ask in video, or put something in the Q&A section. And I'm having here two questions from Chris, and I'm starting maybe with the one that is a bit more related to the profiles, and then we can cover the other one as well. So he's asking on managing the intensity of aroma and flavor of highly fermented coffees. How would you suggest to manage the intensity to be less overpowering through the roasting profile packs?
Yeah, fantastic. So this is why we developed Filter E. So Filter E is a specific approach that we wanted to focus on more of the fruit-driven qualities over the potential cognac, cacao nib, maybe whiskey tones that you can get from some of the more fermented coffees. This profile is really designed around high application of heat at the start of the roast, mellowing out through the middle in terms of a more flatter approach coming into first crack, and a very, very low time to temperature increase ratio. Generally for this approach, we're looking for a much shorter development, so anywhere from 8.5 to 9%, which is roughly translating to 30 to 40 seconds at the absolute most. But we also pair that with a much quicker roast. So we are more working with a roast that's going to be finishing around the 6:40 to 7-minute mark at the absolute most, and pairing all of those combinations together when it comes to the heat at the start to make sure it's still soluble, the flattening out of the heat so that we can focus on extending Maillard but having a much lower temperature increase after the point of first crack, and as well as the shorter development, is generally for us the best approach that I would say for those more highly fermented coffees. It's a profile that, if you read about the description, is specialized specifically for those particular coffees. If wanting to work outside of the existing default for those style of coffees, my main suggestion would be focusing on, generally speaking, a lower DTR percentage range, so a lower development time ratio. In order to bring balance. Something that you can work on is potentially having a profile that has a higher increase of maybe, in a minute, 7 or 8 degrees after first crack, but just focusing on a 25 to 30 second time after the point of first crack. So it's high intensity, but very short lived. The reason that high intensity coffees are harder to roast and generally make it harder to brew without getting those heavier flavors is through the extended fermentation, you have a lower amount of available sugars to caramelize. And we think about the point of first crack, and after that, Jerome mentioned we're caramelizing the qualities. So because there is less available sugars, a simple solution is just reducing the amount of time post first crack. Not always simply just reducing the temperature, but time definitely is going to make a massive impact to making a more fruit forward and expressive version of those coffees.
Right, perfect. Thanks a lot. And there is another question from Chris, and he's then asking about how to bring the coffees to the competition by playing. So would you recommend, for example, putting in cubes and vacuum seal the coffee before, or what are your recommendations to bring the roasted coffee to the competitions?
Yeah, and I'll cover this and I'll go for it.
No, I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a really cool one is in Greece. The guy who actually ended up winning, he was using the first iteration of Link, and he actually roasted all of his coffee over in Chile, roasted it and put it into 100-gram bags, and literally like taped up the valve basically for it, traveled with it. And then he was using 20 to 22 day old coffee off of the Link, which I found to be quite useful. But what I would highly suggest is always putting it into like smaller bags if you can possibly just prevent it from being from the valve from decreasing and really aging out your coffee. But another suggestion, like you said, tubes is very good. I've seen people go crazy to the extent where they have dry ice and they get shipped with dry ice, and they're actually stabilizing their coffee no matter what temperature or anything that it's actually happening. Vacuum sealing is very good. Just be wary of how your coffee is actually aging as well. I would definitely vacuum seal a coffee once it's at the ideal age, and then you can start to play a little bit more with freezing. There's so many different ways, but my basic way is basically with bags. Whenever I'm traveling, I typically have like that 80-gram bag. I make sure that everything's been sealed, and I just tape the valve. When I get there, I wait 24 hours, and I typically take off the tape out of it just to let it degas a little bit more, and then I'll open the bag up and let it really open up. This just allows your coffee to really shine. What you'll notice is when you actually travel with plane, you're not actually aging the coffee much at all because they're getting super high in the altitude. So you really want your coffee to stabilize where you're actually at. Think of temperature as like a big point as well. I think one of the main struggles I realized over in Jakarta is humidity and temperature was so hot, so a lot of people were storing their coffees way too hot in temperature and allowed a lot of their coffees to crash. So a lot of these higher intensity, complex, anaerobic natural coffees, they change so much with temperature. So that's something really mindful that you need to keep aware of. Try and always keep it in a cool, dry place that doesn't get much sunlight, and you'll always be put into a very, very good position.
Just if I can further on some of that from Jerome, generally speaking, because we used to have to do it a lot before we could roast at a pit place that we were traveling to, is making sure that the coffees generally go in hand luggage, is generally more stable from a cabin pressure. In the checked luggage, there is the complete pressurized drop, which forces the air out of the coffee and can almost choke the coffee up because it's a rapid suction of almost vacuuming it, which kind of stalls the progression. And as we know, most coffees, when they're in bag resting, we're wanting it to degas and progress in flavor qualities. It can actually be quite disruptive if it's in the checked luggage. So I would recommend, if it's a particularly special or important batch of coffee, traveling with you in the cabin is generally more recommended. Jerome's hit the nail on the head with the approaches. It's approaches we've used for various competitions for the last 15 years, and particularly the last 10 years when we're hitting world success with people we've worked with, is the vacuum, the bag, smaller format, taping the valve as you're at the airport. Then when you're arriving, as you arrive or a few hours or a day later, removing the tape from the valve and letting it progress from there. Best thing about it is now you can roast where you're going. So just take your green and roaster, and it's generally going to be a safer option if you've got enough time.
Okay, thanks a lot. One question from Kirill is about then translating the profiles from the link to a production roaster. And here I would say, because this is such a big topic, we actually even made a webinar some weeks ago on specifically this topic. And so maybe that's not something to cover here, but I'm going to post the link to the webinar recording for you, Kirill. But another one that is on the topic is from Hanief. And the question is, are there any more adjustments that I should make or consider after increasing and decreasing the temperature point of certain profiles to lengthen or shorten the specific roasting phase? So it's like increasing the fan speed or changing the time to temperature ratio.
I think that it's like we're talking very nano details. As you saw, Martin's WBRC profile that Jerome customized was taking one of the base profiles and just sifting minor elements. He moved the first crack 5 seconds earlier and increased the time to temperature ratio from 7 as the base average minimum, 6 as the base average minimum, up to 7 in order to achieve the roast degree needed for the solubility wanted. I would start first by optimizing the profile. So finding the right roast plan that you're looking for that brings out the 80 to 85% of the characteristics you want. From there, making sure that the first crack is optimized, that if there's a particular default range, knowing that we're hitting that time. So if the target is hitting 7 minutes, at least getting within 5 seconds up or down from that default time when it comes to the power curve you can use. From there, then you have the ability to make those nano adjustments that Jerome's really talking about in his presentation when it comes to shifting points up or down, when it comes to higher increase after first crack, shorter or longer developments, etc. So I would do it in a stepped phase. I think if you start customizing, edit before you get to an understanding, you're going to be lost in the process. By doing it systematically, you're going to find a greater solution to work through and understand what variable you changed, what the outcome was, and then maybe where you need to go. If you're shifting too many dials at the same time, you may get lost in which dial is actually having what effect. So that would be my starting point for you. Jerome, anything else you need to add on?
No, nothing really to add on. I would just be making sure, like as Sam was saying, is tasting everything that you're roasting. See how it's actually contributing. What is it adding? What is it not doing to like the final cut? Because sometimes at the end of the day, once you actually start looking deeper into like one coffee, sometimes it's actually better to do a blend of the same coffee roasted 2 different ways, because you might see something like E, for example, when we were talking about the crazy anaerobic natural, it's going to bring the best expression without lower style development. It's going to be very expressive, very intense and aromatic, but something maybe you need like a filter B just for that structure. So breaking down the roast plans and using the existing database and then seeing how each are contributing to the cup, I think can be very valuable. There was quite a few competitors, I didn't include them in here, but they actually blended a lot of their coffees with the same coffee but roasted differently to achieve certain results. So that's something that's definitely on trend at the moment, and definitely something I would look at exploring as well once you actually start to understand how each coffee is bringing to the table with what roast plan.
I hope this video was helpful for you, and I wish you all the best for your next competitions. And just to mention, if you're interested in a Link roaster, if you haven't got one yet, if you're in Europe, then make sure to come to our website, roastrebels.com. We have them in stock. We have free and fast shipping all over Europe, and we have the most experienced service center over here. So also, if you have other questions or if you need other tools, then have a look at our website, come back to me, ask me any questions anytime. I'm looking forward to talking to you. You find my contact on roastrebels.com.